There's something about New York that I really like, that kind of like kicks your butt constantly. I want to sort of always be a little bit scared, in a livelihood sense. Like, how am I going to scramble to keep like doing what I'm doing? I remember very specifically suddenly being confronted with how good every band in New York was, and like how bad comparatively we were. And at that point, we were largely getting by on charisma and enthusiasm. And especially in New York, it seemed like charisma and enthusiasm in 2001 were no good. Like the idea at that point especially was to just be stock still on stage, sort of glowering and playing, incredibly well. I think the first show I saw when I moved to New York, it was at Bowery Ballroom, and French Kicks were second on, and Interpol was headlining. And I was like, oh boy, New York's definitely got a very specific thing happening, and I am not slotting into it. I grew up in Miami. It was a pretty miserable place to live in the 80s, despite what Miami Vice may have taught you. It was, well, I guess as Miami Vice may have taught you, it was not very kid-friendly. I went to college in Southern California, which is where I met Chris, my bandmate, and we formed the band after we graduated and moved to New York shortly thereafter. I moved here in May of 2001. Chris moved here on September 10th, 2001. Yeah. That incredible sea change in New York and the United States and I guess the world sort of coincided with general upheaval in our lives anyways. To have been here on that day kind of felt like you needed to stay here and like see it through. Our very first show in New York was at this metal club in Brooklyn called L'Amour, which I think had its heyday in the 80s as like a straight up metal club. I think we knew one band. They were friends of mine from elementary school. My friend was going to Pratt, and he moved into the McKibben Lofts in Williamsburg. But so yeah, we knew those guys, and we played actually our first bunch of shows at their loft. And somehow we met a bunch of Yale theater kids, like who had just graduated. They founded this like black box theater called The Tank, which is still around. It's moved a few times. It was in Tribeca for a while. We played a few shows there and started curating shows that were kind of a mix between music and comedy. We had to make our own shows. Like no reliable promoters would book us. Remember we got a show at Brownies, a great venue, and was amazingly curated. Like I first saw Yeah Yeahs there, Liars, and people like that. But it was sort of the entry-level club for being a real band in New York. Every time we played Brownies, it was, a Monday at 7, and, we probably played just to mutual friends who were like, well, I know 2 of these guys in the band, I'll come see them. I think the first show where I actually felt like there were maybe some people there that we didn't know personally was at CBGB. It's the first show that I distinctly remember walking on stage and the whole club was really full. I was like, oh, well, this is a different experience altogether. When we moved here, we kind of got intrigued by the tougher versions of what's going on. Like, I really liked when Yeah Yeahs were at their super chaotic, like Liars were really exciting to us. The Rapture, especially that first Rapture record, there's the sound of just things breaking on it and stuff. I think that was really inspiring to us that, these people had written what were essentially pop songs at their heart, but then were presented as sort of anything but pop songs. Were really thoughtful in their arrangements and kind of like weird and almost combative. Les Savy Fav were kind of like that. Those were the bands more than the Strokes or whatever, who are amazing, and I love that record, but I think I was kind of more into the chaotic things. I think New York very heavily influenced the lyrics on our first 2 records. I mean, the first record is definitely just a chronicle of, doing temp jobs or internships at film companies and stuff, and then going back to Bensonhurst on a train at 3 a.m. or crashing on somebody's floor in Williamsburg and kind of waking up really hungover and not wanting to go to a temp job, but being incapable of the next night saying, you know what, I'm not going to stay out till 3 a.m. Going hard at all times, but like needing to keep your shit together because it's New York, and if you're not, paying your bills, you need to move back in with your parents in South Florida. I lived in Bensonhurst for a year, 18 months or something, and I moved to Williamsburg. So I guess I was in Williamsburg from 2003 until 2013, and have been in Greenpoint ever since. I think a lot of my choices are pretty Greenpoint heavy right now. Probably my favorite restaurant is a place called Esma, which is on Manhattan Ave. Really awesome, quote, American bistro. Probably the best fries in New York, I think. Champion Coffee, also on Manhattan Ave. Probably my favorite coffee place. I'm sort of bad about my devotion to coffee because as much as I love coffee, I love cookies more. So a coffee shop's pastry scene is going to have a huge influence on how I feel about its coffee. To be perfectly honest, Champion's pastries are not all I dream of. There's a place called, they pronounce it bakery, but I hate doing that, so I refuse to. But it's bakery spelled with an I, and their pastries are insane. I think my coffee taste got a little more highfalutin in like year 2 or 3 of living in New York, and now I think it's receded again. I do think being on the road has really affected like what I want out of coffee. We're pretty big devotees of a filter coffee. We no longer like to mess around with any espresso-based things. They go wrong in so many ways. I would say if you're an aspiring musician, move to very deep Queens. Try to find a place with, a basement, if you can, that you're allowed to use. Finding a place to rehearse in New York is harder than ever. We as scientists no longer keep a rehearsal space because we're like, man, if we're not in there, 2 full weeks of the month, it definitely hasn't paid for itself. Now we do the hourly rehearsal thing, which is terrible, and I hate doing it. Buy a really good pair of headphones, because all the music you make is going to be done into headphones, not monitors.